Long before cities rose upon the earth, before kings carved their names into stone, humanity looked up to the night sky and wondered what forces moved in the darkness above. The stars were more than distant fires, they were voices, calling out with secrets that stirred both awe and fear. Across cultures and ages, one theme returned again and again, the belief that beings of light descended from the heavens, bearing knowledge that would forever change the fate of mankind. These beings came to be known as the Watchers. Their story survives in fragments of sacred texts, in myths of gods who mingled with mortals, and in half-forgotten legends carried through generations. They were remembered not only as radiant teachers, but also as tempters who led humanity into forbidden paths. Their dual nature, both divine and fallen, has haunted memory, for they brought wisdom that lifted civilizations and corruption that nearly destroyed them. The Watchers were not silent observers. They stepped across the boundary between the eternal and the mortal, walking among men, speaking words that revealed the mysteries of the heavens and the earth. They gave gifts that seemed like miracles, yet every gift carried a shadow. Metallurgy led to weapons, enchantments to sorcery, astronomy to fatalism. Humanity, dazzled by their brilliance, could not see the cost of what it was receiving. Even when their story was banned or buried, it refused to disappear. The Book of Enoch, hidden for centuries, preserved visions of their descent, their rebellion, and their judgment. Flood myths across the world remember the great erasure of their presence. Monuments aligned to the stars may still carry their fingerprints, and in the silence of our nights, when strange lights cross the sky, many still wonder if their gaze has ever truly left us. The legacy of the Watchers is not just history, it is a shadow that stretches into the present. Are they gone forever? Or do their whispers still move through our thoughts, our inventions, our hunger for the stars? Their story remains unfinished, echoing with the possibility that what once descended could one day return. This is the journey we now begin together. If you enjoy exploring such mysteries, remember to subscribe to the channel, give this film a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support keeps these hidden stories alive and brings them to light for all who search for answers beneath the stars. From the highest realms of light, a choice was made that would forever alter the course of human history. The Watchers, celestial beings who once stood in the courts of the heavens, looked upon the earth below with a mixture of longing, curiosity, and defiance. Ancient traditions tell of their brilliance, their forms shining like fire and lightning, yet it was the mortal world, with its fragility and allure, that drew them downward. They were not compelled by command, but by their own will, a decision that carried both fascination and peril. The texts that preserve their memory describe their descent not as a gentle arrival, but as a momentous rupture, a crossing of boundaries never meant to be broken. The Watchers stepped beyond the ordained separation between heaven and earth, binding themselves to a realm of dust and shadow. For some, the reason was desire, a longing for the beauty of human women. For others, it was rebellion, a refusal to remain forever as distant observers. And for some, perhaps, it was compassion, a yearning to share knowledge with a world struggling in darkness. Their descent was a spectacle that seared itself into human memory. Imagine the night skies of ages past, when shepherds and wanderers looked upward and saw fire descending, not like the ordinary stars that fell briefly and vanished, but a procession of luminous figures streaking across the heavens. To the eyes of mortals, such a vision could only mean the arrival of gods. The earth trembled with their presence, and the air shimmered with a power that was both terrifying and enthralling. As they set foot upon the world, their radiance must have seemed overwhelming. Yet as time passed, their brilliance began to fade, for the longer they dwelled in the human realm, the more bound they became to it. What once shone with purity began to carry the weight of mortality. Their voices, which had once echoed with divine authority, took on tones of passion, jealousy, and hunger. It was not only humanity that would change under their guidance. The Watchers themselves were transformed by the very choice they made. The first encounters between the Watchers and humankind were moments of awe. Villages and clans who once lived in simplicity now found themselves in the presence of radiant beings who spoke of the heavens, who revealed mysteries of stars and seasons, and who offered gifts far beyond the reach of human ingenuity. The people worshipped them, feared them, and surrendered to their influence, for how could they resist beings who seemed to stride between the worlds of gods and men? Yet the descent was not a singular act. It was a union, a mingling of two worlds that had been kept apart. By choosing to cross into the mortal sphere, the Watchers had defied the natural order, binding themselves to humanity in ways that would ripple across generations. Their wisdom would plant seeds of civilization, but their defiance would also sow destruction. What began as a descent of wonder would soon become a descent of consequences. This act of leaving the heavens was not hidden, for ancient peoples remembered it in countless forms. In Mesopotamia, stories of beings descending with knowledge to guide mankind took shape. In distant cultures, myths of sky gods and star-born teachers appeared. The echo of their arrival is universal, as though the memory of their coming left an imprint too deep to be erased. The Watchers did not merely step onto the earth, they claimed it. In that claim lay the foundation of all that would follow. The rebellion, the oaths, the forbidden unions, and the rise of something the world had never seen before. Their story, born from the heavens, had now become bound to the fate of mankind. Amid the rugged landscapes of the ancient Near East, one mountain looms with an aura of mystery. Mount Hermon. Rising high above the plains, its snow-capped peaks gazed over the crossroads of early civilizations. To many, it was a sacred height, a place where heaven seemed to touch the earth. Yet within its shadow, legends tell of a covenant forged in secrecy, a pact that would seal the destiny of the Watchers. It is said that upon this mountain the leaders of the fallen gathered to bind themselves to one another. Their descent was no passing whim, no fleeting act of curiosity. It was a rebellion, deliberate and unshakable. Ancient accounts describe their leader, often called Semjaza, standing before them, his voice echoing across the heights, declaring the vow that none could turn back from. Each one, filled with hesitation and fear of punishment, knew the gravity of what they were about to undertake. Yet fear alone could not restrain them. They desired the mortal world too deeply. They desired its women, its beauty, and the chance to shape destiny with their own hands. To silence their doubts, they swore together in unison, an oath of defiance that chained them not only to humanity, but to one another. Breaking away from the heavenly order was no longer a private act. It became a collective rebellion, bound in blood and spirit upon the stones of Hermon. Legends speak of that mountain as cursed from that day forward, for it became the site of their forbidden vow. Some traditions claim the very name Hermon derives from the Hebrew root to bind by oath, a memory of the rebellion sealed there. From that height, the Watchers descended not as wandering visitors but as conspirators, stepping into the human realm united in purpose. The oath was unbreakable, and with it their fate was sealed. No longer watchers at a distance, they had chosen to become participants in the mortal struggle, entangling themselves in a destiny from which there would be no escape. Their pact was more than defiance against heaven, it was the birth of a new order upon the earth. The atmosphere surrounding Mount Hermon in those times must have carried an uncanny energy, as if the very stones bore witness to the vow. Tales from generations whispered of lights upon its peaks, of voices carried on the wind, of presences felt but unseen. Travelers spoke in hushed tones of the place, as though to utter its secret aloud invited peril. Mount Hermon became a threshold, a place where divine law was broken and a new law of rebellion established. From its slopes, the Watchers stepped down not as silent guardians, but as masters ready to imprint their will upon the world. That covenant, sealed in the shadow of the mountain, would unleash knowledge, power, and bloodlines the world had never before known. Once bound by their oath, the Watchers began to share what they carried from the heavens. They became teachers, revealing to humanity secrets long hidden. Their gifts were dazzling, profound, and dangerous, shaping the course of civilizations that followed. To the people of that age, it must have seemed like an awakening, as if the very mysteries of creation had been unlocked. One of the most striking gifts was the art of metallurgy. They taught men how to draw ore from the earth, to refine it with fire, and to shape it into tools and weapons. What had once been a world of stone and wood was suddenly transformed. Fields could be tilled with greater ease, cities could be built with stronger implements, yet with the same knowledge, swords and spears were forged, instruments that would forever change human conflict. To women, they revealed arts of adornment and enchantment, the use of precious stones, the crafting of jewelry, the mixing of cosmetics. These were more than mere ornaments. They became symbols of power, allure, and manipulation. Beauty was heightened, but it also became a weapon, binding hearts and bending wills. Desire grew sharper, and with it came jealousy, rivalry, and the unraveling of communities once bound by simplicity. The Watchers also unveiled the secrets of the stars. They taught the movements of heavenly bodies, the cycles of the sun and moon, and the ways to read destinies in the constellations. What began as a sacred science of observing the heavens turned into astrology, where the fates of men were bound to signs and omens. In their hands, the cosmos became a script, and humanity began to believe it was no longer free, but tethered to the patterns written above. Enchantment and sorcery were among their teachings as well. Incantations, the mixing of herbs, the summoning of spirits, these arts gave humans access to hidden powers, yet they opened doorways that were never meant to be crossed. The boundary between the natural and the supernatural grew thin, and shadows entered where light once ruled. Every gift was double-edged. For every advance came a corruption. With every tool of progress came an instrument of destruction. The people learned quickly, but they also fell quickly, driven by new passions, new ambitions, and new conflicts. The Watchers had accelerated human development, yet at a cost so deep it would echo for millennia. In the glow of these teachings, humanity rose higher than ever before, yet beneath that glow was a gathering storm. The Watchers had not simply offered knowledge, they had sown seeds of imbalance. Their gifts would become both the foundation of civilizations and the spark of humanity's darkest chapters. From the forbidden union of the Watchers and the daughters of men came a lineage unlike any the world had ever seen. They were called the Nephilim, beings of immense stature and power, remembered in whispers as giants who walked the earth. Their birth was the ultimate violation of the boundary between heaven and earth, a mingling of the eternal with the mortal that produced creatures both wondrous and terrifying. Descriptions of the Nephilim vary, yet across traditions they are remembered as figures of awe. Some accounts speak of their colossal height, warriors who towered above ordinary men, whose strength was unmatched, and whose presence inspired both reverence and dread. Others portray them as kings and rulers, dynasties born of unnatural blood, who wielded authority not through divine right, but through the mingling of celestial lineage. These beings were not mere myths to the people of ancient times. Stories of giants pervade cultures across the world. In the Near East, the Nephilim stood as a warning of corruption. In Greek myths, the Titans mirrored their presence. In lands far removed, tales of colossal ancestors and sky-born rulers surface again and again. The resonance is too widespread to be dismissed as coincidence. The Nephilim brought influence wherever they arose. They reshaped the balance of human life, commanding cities, leading wars, and establishing bloodlines that claimed dominion over ordinary men. Some were worshipped as gods, seated upon thrones of stone, remembered in carvings and monuments that still puzzle us today. Their very existence blurred the line between history and myth, leaving traces that scholars continue to wrestle with. Yet their legacy was not solely of power and majesty. They were also remembered for bringing terror. Their appetites, both physical and spiritual, were vast. Ancient texts hint at their violence, their hunger that consumed resources, their pride that led to oppression. Humanity, which had once stood in awe of their towering presence, came to fear them as oppressors rather than protectors. The earth itself seemed to groan beneath their weight. Their presence was unnatural, and the balance of creation trembled. Legends tell of conflicts between these giants and the people who sought to resist them. Armies rose, heroes struggled, yet the Nephilim endured as long as their blood ran strong. Their dominance was a shadow over early human societies, one that shaped memory long after they faded. The question remains whether the Nephilim were truly of flesh and blood, walking as colossal beings, or whether they were symbolic of dynasties of power and knowledge. Perhaps both are true, for myths often preserve truths in veiled form. What is certain is that their legacy marked humanity forever, a reminder of what happens when the boundaries of heaven and earth are crossed. The Nephilim became the living proof of the Watcher's rebellion, embodiments of a choice that had fractured the natural order. Their shadow remains in the stories of heroes battling giants, in the warnings of sacred texts, and in the silent stones that may yet hold their memory. They were not only giants of body, but giants of consequence, shaping the course of history in ways we still struggle to comprehend. Long before the stories of the Watchers were scattered across mythologies and whispered through fragmented traditions, one text attempted to preserve their tale in full, the Book of Enoch. This ancient writing, attributed to the great patriarch who walked with God and was taken, speaks with a voice unlike any other. It dares to describe the descent of the Watchers, their forbidden union with mortals, the birth of the Nephilim, and the judgment that followed. Hidden away, banned from the canon of most traditions, the book endured in shadows, resurfacing only in fragments across centuries. The Book of Enoch paints vivid images of celestial beings whose rebellion shook creation itself. It does not veil them in metaphor, but names them, describing their deeds and the gifts they bestowed upon humanity. It is within these pages that we find the most detailed account of how the Watchers corrupted humankind, teaching sorcery, astrology, and the forging of weapons. To read it is to step into a world where heaven and earth are in conflict, where the stars themselves tremble at the defiance of their kin. Enoch's visions are filled with awe and terror. He is described as a chosen intermediary, one who ascends to the heavens, where he beholds the dwelling places of the righteous and the imprisoned halls of the fallen. He becomes the voice that warns the Watchers of their impending doom, declaring that their petition for forgiveness will never be granted. For them, chains await, and for their children, destruction. The severity of this judgment echoes through the text. The Watchers, who once walked among men, are condemned to the depths, bound until a day of reckoning. Their offspring, the Nephilim, who brought ruin to the earth, are destined to be consumed by war and by one another. The Book of Enoch does not flinch from portraying the devastation they brought, nor does it soften the sentence passed against them. What makes the book extraordinary is not only its boldness, but its persistence. Though excluded from most traditions, it survived among communities who saw in it a truth too dangerous to be forgotten. In Ethiopia, it remained preserved, cherished as a sacred text, while elsewhere it survived in fragments, resurfacing in the caves of Qumran among the Dead Sea Scrolls. Its survival suggests that despite attempts to silence it, the story of the Watchers demanded to be remembered. The influence of the Book of Enoch reaches farther than many realize. Certain passages resonate in the New Testament itself, where echoes of chained angels and prophecies of judgment seem drawn directly from its pages. It is as if the shadows of the Watchers could not be fully erased, seeping even into the canon of Scripture that tried to exclude them. The book's exclusion raises its own questions. Why was such a detailed account, so closely tied to the traditions of early faith, pushed aside? Was it too unsettling, too revealing of truths that challenged the structure of belief? Or was it hidden because it unveiled a history of humanity that many wished forgotten? Whatever the reason, the Book of Enoch remains a window into a forbidden past. Its words are like fragments of a song once sung by those who knew of the Watcher's fall. For those who seek to trace the legacy of the fallen, it is a beacon in the shadows, a text that refuses to let the memory of these beings vanish. The world, once alive with the presence of the Watchers and their giant offspring, soon grew heavy with corruption. Violence filled the earth, blood spilled upon the soil, and humanity's innocence was drowned in the shadows of forbidden power. Ancient texts tell of a time when every thought of man was twisted, when chaos reigned and the cries of the oppressed rose to the heavens. It was then, the traditions say, that a great reckoning descended. The Great Flood is remembered across cultures, not as a single isolated tale, but as a shared memory stretching from Mesopotamia to the Americas, from India to the distant isles. It speaks of a deluge that swallowed mountains, erased cities, and left only a remnant to begin anew. In the biblical account, the flood was divine judgment, a cleansing of a world corrupted by the Watchers and their progeny. In Mesopotamian epics, it was the gods themselves who unleashed the waters, weary of humanity's noise and rebellion. Yet in both, one theme stands clear. The flood was an erasure. The Watchers' influence had spiraled beyond control. Their children, the Nephilim, consumed the earth's bounty, devoured its people, and turned the world into a battlefield. The gifts of their fathers had become weapons of tyranny. To preserve creation itself, the flood swept across the earth, a wave that washed away their presence. The waters were not only meant to cleanse, but to bury, to wipe the slate of memory clean. The survival of Noah, or Utnapishtim in Mesopotamian tradition, became the anchor of continuity. These chosen figures preserved life through the waters, carrying the seeds of renewal. Yet behind their survival lingers a haunting question. Was the flood truly complete in its erasure? Could all traces of the Watchers and their offspring have been removed so easily, or did remnants remain, hidden in bloodlines, in fragments of knowledge, in ruins untouched by time? The universality of flood myths suggests something more than imagination. From the Gilgamesh epic to Native American traditions, from Indian Vedic hymns to Chinese legends, the waters return again and again. The shared memory is too striking to ignore. It points to an ancient trauma, a collective remembrance of a world undone by a force of overwhelming destruction. For those who study the Watchers, the flood is more than a tale of water. It is the great erasure, the attempt to cleanse the world not only of corruption, but of memory. The Nephilim were destroyed, the Watchers bound, their teachings scattered, their monuments swallowed or broken. Yet memory is resilient, and even the deepest waters cannot drown it completely. Long after the floodwaters receded, whispers of the giants remained. Ruins told stories of builders too strong to be mortal. Traditions spoke of gods who once walked the earth, and bloodlines claimed descent from rulers unlike ordinary men. The flood had washed the earth, but it could not wash away the shadow. When the waters of the flood receded and new civilizations rose upon the fertile banks of the Tigris and Euphrates, echoes of the Watchers resurfaced under new names. In Sumer and Babylon, some of the earliest cradles of civilization, myths tell of beings who descended from the heavens, bringing wisdom, architecture, and divine authority. The memory of the fallen angels seems to have been transformed into the figures of Apkallu, Anunnaki, and the gods who shaped Mesopotamian tradition. The Apkallu were described as wise beings, often half man, half fish, who emerged from the waters to instruct humanity in the arts of civilization. They taught agriculture, writing, and the building of cities. Their appearance bears striking resemblance to the role of the Watchers, teachers from beyond who bestowed knowledge both sacred and forbidden. Yet the Apkallu are remembered with reverence as culture bringers, their darker side veiled beneath layers of myth. The Anunnaki, on the other hand, appear as powerful gods of the underworld and heavens, arbiters of fate and judgment. Some traditions link them to the Great Deluge, suggesting they played a role in the decision to erase mankind. Others portray them as rulers who descended to govern humanity, seated upon thrones, demanding worship and sacrifice. Their portrayal oscillates between benefactors and oppressors, a reflection of the duality that shadows the legacy of the Watchers. Babylonian myths go further, describing mighty kings who claimed descent from these divine beings. Dynasties traced their lineage not merely to men, but to gods who mingled with mortals. In their reigns we see echoes of the Nephilim, rulers who combined power with a presence that seemed greater than human. Archaeological remains of Mesopotamian cities still bear witness to this blending of myth and rule. Carvings depict winged beings towering over men, carrying symbols of knowledge and power. Temples were built as ziggurats, stairways to the heavens where priests sought communion with gods who once walked among them. The very shape of these structures speaks of longing for the sky, a connection to beings who descended in ages past. The parallels between the Watchers and Mesopotamian figures are striking. Both traditions speak of descent, of gifts given, of unions with humanity, and of judgments that followed. Whether the Apkallu and Anunnaki were direct memories of the Watchers or cultural transformations of the same story, the connection cannot be ignored. Mesopotamia became the stage upon which the legacy of the Watchers took new form. The shadow of their rebellion lingered, woven into the myths of gods and heroes, carried into the laws and rituals of the first great civilizations. The names had changed, but the story remained. Beings from beyond had walked among men, and the memory of their presence refused to fade. As civilization flourished along the Nile, another culture rose to prominence, one whose monuments still tower over the sands: Egypt. Here, too, the echoes of the Watchers can be found, hidden in the grandeur of pharaohs, in the hieroglyphs carved deep into stone, and in the rituals of a kingdom that claimed its rulers were more than mortal. Egypt, perhaps more than any other land, preserved the memory of beings who descended from the heavens to rule as kings. The pharaohs were not seen as ordinary men. They were divine, sons of the gods, embodiments of celestial power, walking in human form. This claim to divinity mirrors the legacy of the Nephilim, the offspring of heavenly and earthly unions. The bloodlines of Egypt were carefully guarded, marriages restricted, as though the ruling house sought to preserve a spark of something not entirely human. Texts and carvings speak of the Shemsu-Hor, the followers of Horus, who ruled before the dynasties recorded in history. These shadowy figures, remembered as semi-divine kings, may carry echoes of the Watcher's offspring. They were said to have reigned for thousands of years, establishing order before the pharaohs we know by name ascended their thrones. Their memory lingers as a trace of an age when gods and men walked side by side. Egyptian mythology tells of sky gods descending, of deities who gave laws, who taught architecture, astronomy, and the secrets of the afterlife. The god Thoth, master of wisdom and writing, resembles the image of a celestial teacher. The builder gods who raised the first temples reflect the same pattern of knowledge descending from the heavens. Behind the veil of divinity lies a story strikingly similar to that of the Watchers. The monuments of Egypt, from the pyramids to the temples of Luxor and Karnak, may hold within their stones the memory of these teachers. Their alignment with the stars, their impossible precision, and their enduring power suggest knowledge that surpasses the abilities of early mankind. Were these structures legacies of the Watcher's gifts, preserved as eternal testimonies to their presence? Rituals of the afterlife also carry traces of forbidden knowledge. The weighing of the soul, the journey through the underworld, the guides and guardians, these echo teachings of cosmic law and judgment that mirror the fate of the Watchers themselves. The Egyptians, in their obsession with eternity, may have been preserving fragments of wisdom passed down from those who once walked among them. Pharaohs, embalmed and entombed with treasures, were not only rulers of their people, but gatekeepers between worlds. Their divine status was not mere metaphor, it was a claim of lineage, a continuation of bloodlines touched by the sky. The Watcher's legacy, woven into Egyptian royalty, remained alive in the sands of the Nile. Egypt stands as a mirror of the Watcher's duality. Its splendor reflects the heights of knowledge and artistry, yet its obsession with power and death reveals the shadows left behind. Among its monuments and myths lies a lingering whisper of the fallen kings of the sky, beings whose influence still radiates from the desert stones. Across the ancient world, colossal stones stand in silence, defying explanation, weathering the ages like guardians of forgotten truths. From the high plateaus of Lebanon to the windswept plains of Turkey, from the Andes to the British Isles, monuments of impossible size and alignment rise as if planted by hands greater than human. To many, these megaliths are not simply remnants of human ambition, but testimonies to knowledge gifted or imposed by the Watchers. At Baalbek in Lebanon, the foundations of the Temple of Jupiter rest upon stones so massive that even modern machines strain to conceive of their movement. Blocks weighing hundreds of tons lie perfectly fitted, as if laid by giants. Legends whispered in the region claim these were the works of beings who descended from the heavens, structures raised as altars and thrones for gods who once ruled the earth. In the heart of Anatolia lies Göbekli Tepe, a site older than any known temple, predating agriculture itself. Its towering T-shaped pillars carved with animals and symbols suggest a ritual center of astonishing sophistication. The very existence of such a structure at the dawn of human history raises questions. Who taught these early peoples to carve, align, and arrange in such a way? Did they labor under the guidance of Watchers eager to mark their presence upon the earth? The great pyramids of Egypt, aligned with the stars of Orion, have long been suspected of holding more than funerary purpose. Their precision, their proportions, and their orientation to the heavens suggest knowledge of astronomy beyond the reach of simple observation. Some believe these were stargates constructed to mirror the heavens, portals between realms where mortals and divine beings could meet. Across oceans, the Andes bear similar mysteries. At Sacsayhuaman, cyclopean walls curve in patterns too precise to be chance, with stones cut and fitted as though shaped by fire itself. In Pumapunku, Bolivia, blocks of andesite lie scattered with cuts so fine that only advanced tools could have shaped them. Were these the works of human hands alone, or do they carry the fingerprint of those who came from the skies? Even the standing stones of Stonehenge whisper secrets of alignment. They track solstices and eclipses, weaving heaven and earth into a single rhythm. Pilgrims gathered there for rituals, believing themselves in contact with powers greater than man. The Watcher's teachings of stars and seasons may have left their trace in such monuments, silent calendars of a knowledge humanity should not have held so early. Theories abound that many of these sites were not merely ceremonial but functional machines of stone aligned to cosmic currents capable of opening gateways. The Watchers, bound to earth but longing for the heavens, may have sought to create bridges back to their lost realm. These stones, heavy with silence, could have been their altars, their tools, even their prisons. What unites these megaliths is not only their scale but their mystery. They challenge the timeline of human development. They whisper of teachers unrecorded, and they endure as puzzles unsolved. Whether as temples, markers, or portals, they carry the shadow of those who once walked among us, leaving their secrets hidden in stone. From the earliest nights of humanity, the stars were not simply lights in the darkness, but messages, maps, and mysteries. The heavens were a canvas where divine stories unfolded, where gods and heroes traced their paths across the sky. Ancient traditions suggest that this knowledge did not arise naturally, but was bestowed by the Watchers, who carried with them the secrets of the cosmos. The Watchers were said to have taught mankind the courses of the sun and moon, the cycles of planets, and the patterns of constellations. What might have begun as simple observation grew into a science of profound complexity. The sky became a mirror, reflecting the order of the divine. Farmers planted by it, rulers claimed power through it, priests foretold the future with it. The gift of astronomy became the foundation of both survival and authority. Yet knowledge of the stars also became bondage. Astrology emerged, binding human fate to the wheel of the heavens. The Watchers taught that constellations carried influence, that the destinies of men were written in the movements above. People looked upward not with freedom, but with fear, believing themselves trapped in a cosmic script from which they could not escape. Sacred sites across the world bear witness to this stellar obsession. The pyramids of Egypt align with Orion's belt. The temple of Angkor Wat mirrors the constellation Draco. The Mayan city of Chichen Itza was built as a calendar of the heavens. These alignments suggest a knowledge universal and ancient, far beyond the means of early civilizations. Did they chart the stars themselves, or were they guided by Watchers who saw the heavens as their true home? The zodiacs carved in temples, the star maps etched on cave walls, the solstice markers aligned with the rising sun, all carry the same message. The heavens and earth were bound together. Humanity was not left to wander blindly. They were shown patterns, given tools, taught to measure time and space as though echoing the order of creation itself. Yet with this gift came division. Priests rose as interpreters of the skies, kings claimed the favor of constellations, and wars were waged under auspicious stars. Knowledge that could have united mankind became a tool of power, separating rulers from the ruled, seers from the blind. The Watchers' teachings became chains of influence, binding humanity to cycles they scarcely understood. Legends even suggest that the stars themselves were gates, pathways through which beings could travel. Comets were seen not as rocks of ice, but as fiery chariots. Constellations were remembered as thrones and palaces in the sky. The heavens became both map and memory of the Watchers' homeland, a constant reminder of what they had lost and what they might one day reclaim. The Watchers' legacy in the stars remains one of both wonder and fear. The constellations shine above us still, carrying the memory of ages when humanity was taught to read the heavens by beings who once dwelt among them. Whether guides or deceivers, their fingerprints are written across the night sky, a message that endures with every rising sun and every falling star. Even after the flood sought to erase their presence, whispers persisted that the blood of the Watchers and their offspring had not been entirely wiped away. The Nephilim may have perished, but their legacy was carried through hidden bloodlines, preserved in the veins of kings, priests, and secret dynasties. This belief, passed down through traditions and legends, suggests that the influence of the fallen has never truly left the earth. Ancient texts hint at giants reappearing even after the deluge. The Anakim, the Rephaim, the Emim, all were tribes described as towering descendants of beings unlike ordinary men. Israelite narratives speak of encounters with these figures, warriors of massive stature whose presence stirred fear in all who faced them. Their persistence implies that the flood was not a complete erasure, but merely a blow against a lineage that continued in shadows. Royal houses across the ancient world often claimed descent from gods. In Egypt, the pharaohs were seen as divine sons. In Mesopotamia, kings traced their lines back to the Anunnaki. In Greece, dynasties claimed to be born of Zeus or Apollo. These claims may not have been symbolic alone. They may have been veiled acknowledgments of bloodlines touched by the Watchers, preserved through careful unions and guarded heritage. The idea of forbidden bloodlines extends beyond antiquity. Medieval legends of dragon blood, of rulers with unearthly ancestry, and of families guarding secret genealogies all point to an enduring memory of power passed through hidden veins. Some whispered of guardianship, others of corruption, but the idea remained constant. Certain families were different, carrying within them a spark from beyond. The Nephilim legacy was not merely physical strength or towering height. It was influence, charisma, an aura that set rulers apart from common men. Those who carried this lineage were often seen as chosen, capable of wielding authority with a weight that ordinary mortals could not match. Whether through divine right or hidden ancestry, their rule was legitimized by something more than human. Secret societies later claimed to preserve these lines, weaving tales of continuity from the ancient past to modern power. Knights, alchemists, and hidden orders whispered of guardianship over knowledge too dangerous for the world. Were they protectors, or were they perpetuating the legacy of the Watchers, ensuring that their influence remained alive across the ages? The persistence of this idea across cultures and eras suggests more than myth. It hints at a truth too subtle to be easily seen, yet too consistent to be dismissed. The sons of the Nephilim may no longer walk as giants, but their inheritance may linger in places of power, in thrones and councils, in bloodlines that still shape the course of nations. The forbidden bloodlines remind us that the Watchers' rebellion was not simply a moment in the past, but a seed planted in humanity, one that continues to grow unseen, weaving influence through generations like a hidden hand guiding history. Though excluded from the canon of most traditions, the Watchers still leave their shadows within the very scriptures that sought to suppress them. Their presence is subtle, often veiled in cryptic verses, yet for those who look closely, traces remain. The Bible does not speak their story openly, yet its whispers echo with familiarity for those who know what to seek. The Book of Genesis offers the earliest glimpse, sons of God, who descended to take wives from among the daughters of men, producing giants. The brevity of the passage conceals the magnitude of the act, yet it hints at the same rebellion described in fuller detail in Enoch. The Nephilim are briefly named, remembered as the mighty men of old, men of renown, whose presence brought corruption to the earth. Later books continue the thread in more concealed ways. In Numbers, the scouts sent into Canaan report encountering giants, descendants of the Anak, whose stature terrified them. In Deuteronomy, the remnants of giant tribes are listed, suggesting that their presence had not vanished entirely. The shadows of the Nephilim lingered in the land, reminders of a forbidden past that could not be fully buried. The Psalms and prophetic writings hint at powers chained in darkness, beings imprisoned beneath the earth until a time of reckoning. In the letters of the New Testament we find references to angels who sinned, who were bound in chains reserved for judgment. Though never named as the Watchers directly, the echo is unmistakable. The memory of their rebellion persisted, carefully concealed yet never entirely erased. The apocalyptic visions of Revelation speak of fallen stars, of beings released from the abyss, of powers once restrained returning to wreak havoc upon the earth. These images carry the same pattern, beings who defied heaven, punished yet awaiting a moment when their chains would no longer hold. The shadows of the Watchers linger in every line. Why such concealment? Perhaps the story was too dangerous to tell openly, too disruptive to the structure of faith. To acknowledge the Watchers fully would be to admit that humanity's history was shaped by more than divine will, that powers once called angels mingled with mortals and left behind legacies of both splendor and ruin. Even in their absence, the Watchers loom. Their presence is felt in the gaps, in the brevity of unexplained verses, in the sudden appearance of giants and the cryptic mentions of chained angels. Their shadow runs like a hidden thread through the tapestry of Scripture, waiting for those with eyes to see. The Bible, while never telling their tale in full, preserves enough to remind us that the Watchers were not forgotten. They remain in the margins, in the shadows, their memory woven into sacred texts as a reminder of an ancient rebellion that shaped the destiny of the world. Beneath the earth, beneath the seas, beneath the very fabric of our visible world, ancient traditions whisper of a prison made not by human hands, but by divine command. It is called by many names: Tartarus, Sheol, the abyss, and it is said to hold the Watchers who defied the order of heaven. Their rebellion, sealed upon Mount Hermon, led not only to corruption on the earth, but to their own confinement in realms unseen. The Book of Enoch describes them bound with chains of fire, cast into deep caverns of shadow, where their voices echo like distant thunder. Other texts echo the same vision. The Greeks spoke of Tartarus, a pit deeper than Hades, where titans who defied the gods were hurled into darkness. The Mesopotamians told of a watery abyss, a realm of chaos beneath the earth, where divine beings were locked away. Different cultures, different names, yet the same haunting memory, a prison for rebels who were once gods among men. What is this abyss? Is it a literal place hidden within the folds of the earth, or a dimension that lies beneath the surface of perception, accessible only through rifts in reality? The ancients spoke as if it were both, a place where geography and spirit collided, where the banished dwelled beyond the sight of mortal eyes, yet not beyond their influence. Legends of caves and chasms as entrances to the underworld may echo this memory. From the caverns of the Dead Sea to the volcanic depths of the Mediterranean, from the mysterious shafts beneath pyramids to the labyrinthine tunnels beneath mountains, myths persist of gateways that lead downward, not upward. For those who wandered too far, stories tell of voices in the dark, whispers that were not of men. The chains described were not of iron alone, but of something deeper, bonds that restrained power itself. The Watchers, who once strode among mortals with radiance, now lie shrouded in shadow, waiting, some traditions say, for the appointed time when the seals will be broken. Their imprisonment was not annihilation, but delay, a pause in their influence, a silence heavy with anticipation. The abyss beneath is not empty. Ancient visions describe monstrous beings imprisoned there as well, offspring of rebellion, entities too destructive to roam the surface. The Nephilim, once giants upon the earth, became restless spirits after death, and some were believed to wander the underworld chained with their fathers, crying out with insatiable hunger. In apocalyptic visions, the abyss is not sealed forever. The Revelation of John speaks of a time when the abyss will be opened, when locust-like creatures will swarm forth, when the chained will rise again. Such imagery suggests not only imprisonment but the certainty of release, a foreboding that the Watcher's silence is temporary. The abyss beneath is more than a prison. It is a reminder that rebellion carries consequence. Yet it is also a warning that the story of the Watchers is not finished. Their voices may be silenced, but their shadows still stir, waiting in chains for a moment long foretold. Prophecies scattered across ancient texts and later traditions speak of a time when the Watchers, or those like them, will rise again. They are not remembered only as beings of the past, but as figures destined to return, to reappear in the final chapters of history as both teachers and deceivers. Humanity, they say, will once again stand at the threshold of contact with those who once descended from the heavens. The idea of their return is woven into visions of apocalypse. The prophets speak of stars falling from the sky, of beings released from their chains, of knowledge once hidden becoming revealed. To some, this signals hope, the arrival of guides who will restore what was lost. To others, it heralds disaster, the resurgence of a rebellion that once nearly destroyed the earth. The Watchers were called teachers, and it is as teachers they are prophesied to come again. But what will they teach? Will they unveil the secrets of the cosmos once more, lifting humanity into heights of understanding? Or will their lessons lead to corruption as they did before, binding mankind to powers beyond its control? The ambiguity of their role deepens the mystery of their return. Ancient seers described visions of figures rising from the deep, clothed in brilliance yet carrying the weight of deception. They would perform wonders, signs in the heavens and on the earth, drawing the nations to marvel. Their knowledge would dazzle, their promises would entice, yet behind the light would linger a shadow. The return of the Watchers is tied closely to the rise of false messiahs, figures who appear as saviors yet lead into ruin. The echoes of their rebellion suggest that should they rise again, they may cloak themselves in benevolence, speaking words of wisdom, offering gifts of power, yet weaving chains of control. Humanity, hungering for knowledge, may welcome them once more, forgetting the lessons of the past. The signs of their coming are said to be written in the world itself. Strange lights in the skies, upheavals in nature, wars and unrest, a rising hunger for secret knowledge, all these are seen as precursors. The Watchers, imprisoned in silence, stir again, their return not as distant myth, but as approaching reality. What gives this prophecy weight is not only the ancient texts, but the intuition that humanity itself carries. The fascination with visitors from beyond, the yearning for teachers from the stars, the anticipation of contact with higher powers, these reflect a memory buried deep, a longing for the Watchers who once walked among us. Yet with longing comes danger, for not all who return as teachers come with pure intent. The prophecy of their return is not a closed story, it is an open warning, a reminder that humanity stands once more at a threshold. The Watchers may come as radiant guides, but their legacy reminds us that light can conceal shadow, and that the return of the teachers may reshape the world in ways we cannot yet imagine. As the ages turn and humanity enters an era of unprecedented upheaval, many traditions speak of a time when the veil between worlds will thin, when truths long concealed will erupt into daylight. This time has been called the Awakening, a moment when the memory of the Watchers will no longer rest in whispers, but stand openly before mankind once again. Prophets of old spoke of signs in the heavens, stars falling, strange lights blazing, the sun darkened, and the moon turned to blood. These were not merely cosmic events, but heralds of revelation. The awakening would come when humanity was at its most divided, its most vulnerable, when knowledge had multiplied, yet wisdom had faded. Then the hidden past would return to confront the present. The awakening is described as both liberation and peril. For some, it is the lifting of the veil, the moment when humanity recognizes its true heritage, both divine and corrupted. The Watcher's return could be seen as the restoration of forgotten teachers, bringing knowledge to heal a fractured world. Yet others warn that this revelation will not bring freedom, but bondage, as mankind embraces once again the deceivers who cloak themselves in light. Signs of this prophecy are often sought in the world around us. The surge of technology, the global restlessness, the rise of interest in the stars, all echo a memory that humankind is reaching for something beyond itself. Political chaos, environmental crisis, and spiritual hunger combine into a stage set for revelation. In such times, the Watchers of the skies speak of imminent change. The prophecy of awakening does not belong to one tradition alone. In Christian visions, the fallen are loosed for a season, bringing deception upon the nations. In Islamic eschatology, beings imprisoned beneath the earth emerge once more. In Hindu and Buddhist cycles, the age of darkness ends with the revelation of truths hidden in earlier times. Different voices, yet the same refrain. What was hidden will be revealed. The awakening is not only cosmic, but personal. It is said that individuals too will begin to remember, who dreams of strange beings, visions of ancient knowledge, sudden insights into mysteries long forgotten. These may be the stirrings of bloodlines and spirits touched by the fallen. Humanity, awakening not only collectively but within, may discover that the legacy of the Watchers has never truly left. Yet the danger lies in the seduction of knowledge without discernment. The Watchers once dazzled mankind with gifts that brought ruin. If they return in the time of awakening, their wisdom will again appear radiant, their teachings irresistible. But the question remains, will humanity embrace them as saviors or recognize the shadow beneath their light? The prophecy of awakening does not speak of resolution, but of choice. It is the moment when humanity must decide whether to ascend with wisdom or descend once more into chains of deception. The Watchers, it is said, are stirring, and the age of silence draws toward its close. As the story of the Watchers moves toward its climax, ancient prophecies speak of a great reckoning, a conflict not of nations alone but of cosmic powers. The Watchers, long imprisoned, long remembered, are said to face a final confrontation with the forces of divine justice. It is not merely humanity on trial, but the very beings who shaped its fate in rebellion. The visions of this judgment are filled with fire and thunder. Thrones are set, books are opened, and the deeds of both mortals and angels are weighed. The Watchers, once radiant in their descent, now stand accused of corrupting the earth, of breaking the boundaries set from the beginning. Their punishment is not annihilation, but eternal separation, cast into depths where their influence will never rise again. Yet the conflict is not confined to heaven. The earth itself becomes the battlefield. Nations rage, leaders claim divine authority, signs appear in the skies. Some say the Watchers will return to lead humanity into rebellion, one final time, masquerading as liberators, guiding kings and rulers into a last stand against the divine order. Their charisma, their brilliance, their knowledge may deceive even the wise. The scriptures speak of armies gathering, of a great clash where the shadows of the fallen meet the fire of the eternal. The imagery is staggering. Stars falling, mountains trembling, seas boiling. It is as if creation itself convulses in the struggle, caught between two forces that once shared the same heavenly origin. For humanity, this moment is both terror and decision. To follow the Watchers is to embrace knowledge without restraint, power without accountability. To resist them is to stand with the unseen, trusting in a justice that often feels distant. The judgment is not only upon the fallen, but upon mankind's response to them. Some traditions describe a great separation, where the bloodlines of the fallen are finally exposed, their influence broken, their dominion shattered. Others suggest that their presence lingers even after judgment, a scar upon the fabric of creation, a reminder of rebellion that can never be fully erased. The final judgment is not merely destruction, but unveiling. The masks are removed, the deceivers unmasked, the truth revealed in blazing clarity. The Watchers, who once came in radiance, are shown in their true form, stripped of the glory they once bore. Light and darkness stand face to face, and the destiny of both angels and men hangs in the balance. The story of the Watchers, from their descent to their rebellion, from their gifts to their chains, leads to this moment. It is the reckoning of all that has been hidden, the confrontation of light against darkness, the closing of an ancient wound that has shaped the world since time began. The tale of the Watchers stretches across millennia, from the first whispers of their descent to the prophecies of their return. Yet their shadow is not confined to the past or to the distant future. Many believe that they still move among us, not in open brilliance, but in silence, hidden behind the veils of modern life. They no longer stride openly upon mountains or carve their names into the stones of temples, yet their presence is felt in subtler ways, shaping dreams, guiding ambitions, stirring unrest in the human soul. In the quiet of night, when the world is still and the sky opens wide, people sometimes feel the gaze of unseen eyes. It may be no more than the shiver of instinct, yet across cultures, across ages, the sense persists that humanity is watched, not only by the divine, but by those who once walked beside us. Their whispers are said to come in visions, in sudden insights, in knowledge that feels older than memory. The monuments they left remain, standing like sentinels in stone, but perhaps their greater legacy is in the fabric of thought itself. Our hunger for knowledge, our restless search among the stars, our drive to transcend our limits, these may all be echoes of their gifts, still resonating through the ages. Whether they intended to raise humanity or to bind it, their influence cannot be denied. Some see their hand in wars, in inventions that arrive too swiftly, in rulers who rise with charisma that feels unearthly. Others see them in the quiet, in the hidden societies that preserve secrets, in the scientific leaps that seem less discovered than remembered. To believe in the Watchers is to believe that history is not entirely human, that our story has always been shaped by presences beyond ourselves. Yet the greatest question remains unanswered. Are the Watchers enemies who continue to corrupt, or are they guardians waiting in silence until humanity is ready? The myths do not agree, and perhaps they were always both, teachers and deceivers, protectors and destroyers, their dual nature a mirror of our own. When we look to the stars today with telescopes and probes, with satellites and stations, perhaps we are continuing the dialogue they began. The yearning to reach beyond Earth may not be ours alone, but something planted long ago, when beings of fire and light first walked among us. The Watchers may no longer speak in thunder and radiance, yet their whispers are still with us. In dreams, in stories, in the hidden corners of the world, their presence endures, silent but unyielding. And perhaps that is their greatest legacy, not the monuments, not the bloodlines, not even the prophecies, but the simple fact that humanity has never felt entirely alone beneath the stars. We are watched not only by eyes of flesh and blood, but by echoes of a story older than history. The watchers remain unseen, silent, waiting. This concludes the journey through the secret legacy of the fallen angels and the mystery of the watchers. If you enjoyed this film, remember to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, share your thoughts in the comments, and send it to your friends and family who would be fascinated by these ancient mysteries. Your support helps uncover more hidden stories waiting to be told.